Hey, hello. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another Demystifying Post-Productions webinar. And I think everybody here just came back from SIGGRAPH, right, Tony? Welcome back. And what about you, Sammy? How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm out here in San Diego right now doing the whole SeaWorld thing with my kids. So
Cool.
family time.
Cool. And Chad, you're joining from Seattle, right?
From Seattle, yeah.
Amazing.
Look at that. I'm
Right.
in Seattle too, just in a hotel room.
It's
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I could throw a rocket, Chad, from here. we get slap five from here.
Chad's gonna go through the screen.
Yeah. Good morning, Charles. Good morning, Jay. Good to see you guys here. Welcome to Demystifying Post-Productions webinar. And in this month, we're talking about the video productions. And we've talked about the planning sessions in the first week of this month. And then I think last week we talked about the shooting part. And today we finally going to take the cover and reveal how the edit was done. And I think we'll pick some Tony's mind on that, and maybe he can share some tips and tricks into creating a very good editing timeline for your piece. So if you go to maxon.net/events, you'll be able to see all the webinars that we are hosting on our channel. So for example, if you want to get more of Tony Bari, make sure that you join Maxon Color this upcoming Thursday, because on that sessions, Tony and I will talk about collaborations, remote collaborations, from edit until grading. And then for today's sessions, you can also get the downloadable project files. So if you go to the post, there will be a link, the one that lead you into the Dropbox links, and there you can download the XML. You can download the DRP and then the Premiere Pro file as well, along with the assets as well. So you can kind of like follow along if you want to. And if you haven't get your T-shirt, make sure that you follow the link that I'll drop in the chat window. And the code for this week, for this month actually, is creative workflow. I'll drop it in the chat sections as well. And if you want to rewatch the sessions, previous sessions from Demystifying Post-Productions, or Ask the Trainer, or any other webinar hosted by Maxon Training Team, make sure that you visit YouTube and then search for Maxon Training Team, and you'll see all of the webinars that we've been doing so far. So, all right, without further ado, let's hand out the floor to Tony. So Tony, let me make you presenter. And would you mind sharing with us the thought behind, your thought behind all this editing timeline that you create today?
So I'm on my laptop now. I've been spoiled by having my two 4K screens in my face. Now I have like a 2K thing that's way over here. So bear with me. So I'll talk about a couple of things that'll help you watch everything down and help you with your media, because it's pretty intimidating to have like a terabyte or two of media, and then you don't have, you don't know where to start. So, the most obvious thing to do is I like to jump right to the interviews. So if you know where your interviews are, if you know that you're like kind of building your story based on the sound bites, right, you can go and jump ahead to where your interviews are, right? So honestly, this is a clean version of the project. This is something that's it just literally imported a bunch of the cards here and kind of categorized and labeled things. That comes a little bit later. I'll show you the messier version that I have on here, but for right now, I'm just going to show you. This is just everything imported. So nothing special, no major edits have been done. This is like I'm prepping this so it can get watched down, so we can find all the bytes and we can find where the story is. So a lot of the times the story is either in the visual or the story is in your interview. So I'm here and I'm just going to look at a couple of these, I'm in DaVinci Resolve. You can do the same thing in Adobe Premiere, and I'm going to utilize tools in both pieces of software because I typically bounce between both. I even bounce between more than just those two softwares, but in this particular instance, I'm in Resolve, but I will show you some pretty awesome tools on the Adobe side as well. So I'm going to jump to my B4 reel, right? And this is where I have my interviews. And before I even get to that, there's a couple of things you can do. So we'll talk about string outs and then we'll talk about selects. But in particular right now, while you're still at this like very beginner stage of your post, let's talk about string outs. And that's basically taking every single thing that was on that camera card and laying it out A to Z on your timeline. So you can organize and always either go by clip name or file name, right? And clip name usually means what you title things inside of here. So I can change this name and then that would be clip name versus what's on file. But for right now, I'm not digging in too hard and I'm not doing any sub-clipping. Sub-clipping, I can remind me, Max, and I can go over that towards the end here. But sub-clipping is where you can grab just little bytes and you can type in like a fragment of a sentence and then that becomes its own clip, but it's still married to the actual clip that came from the camera. So that's just one way to organize. So let's just go back to organization and in here by clip name, or I'll do by file name, and then you can do from Z to A or A to Z. So I can right click here and choose sort by, you go ascending or descending, right? So I can do, descending, right? And then that's 65, 66. And for this in particular one, right, I happen to have some, on this camera card, there was some of these textures were shot. We didn't shoot out the whole card. So some of these were on here as well, but you can separate them as different reels if you want. In particularly, the textures don't necessarily mesh with the interview. So I would make this, I would start from here, click this clip, and then hold shift and click here, right? And now I would make a timeline, right click, based on that. So create new timeline using selected clips. When you see this, the next menu will actually, the important thing is if you already started to use like in and out points, this is how you can quickly make a selects timeline because you've already selected your in and out points, and then it's going to put all your in and out points from these clips. You can only have one at a time. That's the downside of that. But if I had an in and out point here, 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 and I already kind of carved that out, it'll use those in and out points and put everything already trimmed in the timeline in selection order. So that's a quick way to make selects, but I'm not going to do selects for this. This I would type in here by reel number. So this reel number is B004, right? And this is interviews, and then this is the string out. Okay, so interview string out from B4. You can actually type in your own time code if you wanted to reset that, but for this, I'm not going to do that in particularly. If I wanted to, I like it all to be on mono tracks instead of based on media, and that's just so I can hear the same sound when I'm dealing with anything coming from camera audio. I don't want to hear one on the left and one on the right. I just want to hear one sound in both ears. So I'll set that to mono, and then I'm just going to hit create. Now I've already made this other string out that had everything, and I'll show you the way to do that. But for this one, I'm just going to double click it, and then you're going to see that this literally has from head to toe just interviews, and they're going in order of selection. So you can see that's 70, that's 73, right? So like these are all in the same selection that I made inside of here. So as I select them, the computer knows, and then that gets dictated into where it gets inserted in this timeline I create. Now, what you saw, this is just hopping ahead, right? And this is your window burn. So this is a great tool that you can use for collaborative, you know, when you want to take advantage of like time and resource. So if I have somebody who's just like watching down clips, or a producer that just wants to make paper edits and start to build your story, that's a lot of interview to watch. Like if we look at this interviews, right? This interview right here is, well, this one in particular is not too much, because this is like small bites, and this is like still 20 minutes, 20 minutes to watch. Is that that can be a lot of time. It's not always a lot of time, but that can be a lot of time. And let's say you have 20 minutes times 10 different people that you interview. Now you're talking real time. So to get this, going, I'm going to go here to Workspace and go to Data Burn-In. And this one in particular, right? So in order to come up with this recipe, and why is this important? So if I make a string out timeline, right? Made this string out timeline, and then this is the time code of the timeline. So if you made a marker, and if you use stuff like Frame.io, I think Whipster, there's a couple different resources out there, and even Resolve now has their own. So if you utilize that and you put markers on your timeline, this is one way that you can see exactly what time, or even if you were to type it up in an email, always use your time code. So even if your time code restarted back at 1, right, now you're still using some sort of time code, because that's my timeline time code. This is time code that's on that clip. So as I'm moving my playhead around, you'll see these names of these files will change, and then you'll see the actual time code. This is based on time of day, right, that was shot in camera. So you can actually go to that individual file and find that bit that you want, whatever he says inside of here. Now you know, oh, it was at this time, and it's also on that whole timeline string out at that time. So these are 2 points of references to kind of find that quote. So this is one way, right? This has been done for the longest time, that producers kind of want a burnout, or they want dailies, or this is where you can see all your action. This is where you can see things laid out, and that's where you can make all of your best takes, right? Or your circle takes. And if they're not already done, or there's also some paperwork. Max, I sent you some paperwork. I can pull it up as well. But there's some log sheets and then camera reports, and there's so many ways to do your detective work on the media that you shoot, that you can always get to a quick, find these things quickly. And there used to be, just a quick sidebar, next to the record button, or there was a feature in a lot of the broadcast cameras and just older cameras. I don't see it as much anymore. I think Blackmagic allows you to do it, but it's a little bit more cumbersome. And actually, you can do it on the Blackmagic cameras. You can do it on a separate phone that's Bluetooth to the camera. You can actually add the markers there. But there used to be a little button right next to the record button that was like a shot marker, but not now. Shot marker means something else. But this was literally a marker that you will put in the metadata that pops up as a marker inside of your clips. So it will be read by your NLE, by your software, and you'll see markers already there. So as you're listening to these things, you can place these. So I think it's still available in some cameras. I know Blackmagic still does that, but it's not necessarily used all the time. But I used to love it. It's also, if you're shooting with a recording device, like a Shogun or a Ninja or any of the other recorders that exist, I think those are the only 3 on the 3 on the market now, for some weird reason. But besides that, like when you use a recorder, on the recorder there, you can actually punch in metadata, meaning, good take, which just stripes that whole clip from start to end, or you can do an actual marker at that point. So many ways to tag your clip and know exactly where the greatest media is when somebody says something. There's also log sheets, which allow you to say, hey, at 11:49 and 50 seconds, all right, I know you don't have to go down to the frame level, because you can't really count frames, when you're out in the wild, but you can look at your watch. So if you look at your watch, you match your watch to, you know, match the camera to your watch, right? And you take note of it. So at 11:49 and 50 seconds, he said this, that was excellent, you know, or even from this time range, like 10 minutes ago, you know, you start using real time as a reference. So even if your time code isn't accurate across all cameras, at least you have a range and something that you can work with. So just to let you know how much time code matters in this roadmap to trying to find the best possible things, you know, while you're there in that moment, and you want to convey that to the people editing. If you're not the person editing, you want to send them with notes where to look immediately, and then they don't have to sit here and watch everything and try to rebuild something that you already built. So that's the data burn-in, and this one in particular was record time in. Record time in is right here. That's the timeline time code, right? Source time code, that's the time code on each individual clip. Then the source clip name, right? And then I made a custom text field. And in DaVinci Resolve, you can do these things called wildcards. And it's basically, I'll click here and I hold the shift key and I hit the number 5. And then it basically will look and index all of my metadata, and I can make a field, like a customized field based on metadata. And this one I did based on timeline, right? Timeline name. But I can do another one like camera, right? And then there's camera manufacturer, camera position, right? You know, angle, even lens. So if your lens data is recorded in there, lens type, and then you can even see it starts to populate in here, and it tells me, you know, but it gets a little messy. So you want to go, whenever you do this, you know, put some underscores there, and then it'll separate. So now it says the name of the timeline, underscore, and then the lens used. So you can customize this, you know, burnout screen and even move it wherever you want, right? Here's your X and Y coordinates. So you can move this wherever you want on the screen. It doesn't have to be, you know, and you can also justify your text left, right, and center. And you can also change, I don't know why this defaults to 3D animals. So we're not typing with 3D animals. This is just one of those funny little interface things. So, but you can also change, you know, the background. So if you don't want it to be over black, this is just the typical situation. And it kind of looks like Dynamo, you know, like label maker stuff. But this is very easy to see no matter what. So if it's sitting over top of black, that's good. You can also adjust that opacity as well. So if you had half of it.
Oh, sorry. I thought there was
Sure.
right there and there wasn't. Sorry.
No problem.
Is there something like this in Premiere? I don't think I've
Yes,
seen something like this in Premiere before, and I've seen time code, but not like something this extensive. But I feel like I would use this a lot.
You can do this in Premiere. The way that you do it is you tag it with customized text. I don't think, I know you can print certain metadata to the screen. It's just a little bit more analog than this. So you would do it in before you go to export. So let me see. And that's a great question. So if I go here to export.
I don't mean to derail you. Like we can go back to this like when you get into
No,
Premiere later.
No. It's like this necessarily is kind of a great sidebar, because let's say you're not in DaVinci Resolve and you're not comfortable in Resolve. It's good to know how to do this. So I want to say it lives under not metadata. Things have moved a little bit since I've done them inside of here. So they live under video, I want to say, and more. And it lives under, or no, it's actually effect. So image overlay. So image overlay and name overlay. So here's what you can do. Like these are things that you can type out. So you can't necessarily use your existing metadata in a sense where you can type out a hotkey and then it reads the existing metadata, but it does read your source file name or your output file name, right? Source file name, that's basically coming from exactly what you named that timeline. And then you can prefix it, right? And in here, this is where you can type in any other metadata needed. So if you knew the lens name, if you knew what you know, anything that you want to convey down the line, you can type in here in the prefix or the suffix. You can title up where that is. You can turn this also into your own preset. So you see this? You can save all these settings. So once you dial all these in, this is why, you know, this is actually a good question that you're bringing up. So if we go here to like center, all right, and then we can also like choose, you know, what if this gets generated brand new. So if this is brand new, you know, time code, and then also see how it says like 24. They still mean 2398. I don't know why it says it doesn't have the exact difference, but you can see it's slightly different window. It's a little bit more limited in this sense, but it's still there. So you can use existing things, and then you can size things up according to what your need is, right? And you can put them up and down. One thing that I do like is that it has all these preset positions on the screen. So you could put it in the bottom left, because some people cannot watch something that has window burn dead center unless it's tiny and unless it's, you know, just out of the way. They can't even watch an interview. So, you know, that's why they make this kind of stuff. So not a bad idea. Generating the time code, you can even say where it starts. So it can start on like hour 1. And then when you do start to work on it here, you'll see that it'll populate here, and it'll generate that time code, or it can come straight from the media file. So there's many different ways to do this. This is the way to do it in Premiere. The two major ones, just to backtrack a little bit, is time code overlay and time code overlay and name overlay. Those are the two major ones. And you can do an image overlay too. So if you want this to look a little bit polished, and yes, you can do this in Resolve as well. Another thing that's a really good point of bringing this up is some people cannot watch things unless they're in 709, like a client or a producer. So here's a quick way to kind of get to a nice spot, right? You load up your LUT in here, and then now they'll be able to see it where the black point is in place and it looks polished, and they don't have to watch some, like, you know, washed out footage. So this is one way to do it really fast. And you can make, once you dial all those in, you can set these up as a preset, right? And then you'll save that preset. I think right here, save your preset. And then whenever you do anything that has to do with that client or anything that has to do with this workflow, it's quickly available inside of here. And it'll even make, you can even set it up to make 2 different types of files. One is like your master ProRes high grade file to work with, and the other one is like an H.264 that's just like made for streaming or made for offline. So, you know, that wasn't a bad sidebar, Chad. That was a good addition. So in here,
cool, thanks, man.
just no problem. So to
Can
take
I
things
add
back,
something, Tony?
uh-huh.
Can I add something? Do you still have some space for questions? I think you previously mentioned about paper edit. Are you going to talk about paper edit later on?
Right, like literally right after this.
Right after this. Could you explain what paper edit is?
Paper edit, or like a radio edit. So
yes,
basically you're doing it like you're not looking at the picture, you're listening to the sound, right? That's the radio edit. The paper edit is, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna transcribe all of the stuff. And this sounds like a cumbersome task, but Adobe Premiere has a really strong feature that just kind of you know, changes the way that you work. Now you don't have to farm this out. It used to be you had to farm this out. You could upload to Vimeo and even pay for a service, or you just pay for a service, upload low-res clips to their server, and then you'll get a transcription document. But you pay per word or per minute, and now you can let the AI do it for you. Is it perfect? No, but it's pretty awesome. You can do it multiple languages. You can even like take you know, something from Spanish, translate it in Spanish into Spanish subtitles, then copy and paste that whole document, put it on Google Translate, and then pull that whole thing down in English if you wanted to. So it's like, I'm going to show that in just 1 second. As you can tell, I'm pretty excited about that. So, but the last thing I'll talk about is data burn, just in case, you know, if you wanted to add that little polish to it, You can import something that has an alpha channel, or just something that's small enough that sits in a corner and kind of says, you know, it's like something an agency would do. Like when you're sending this out, you can send this out with a little logo in the corner that just makes it look that much more polished. So when you're sending it out, it also has like your studio name or your production company here. And you can all, like I said, you can move all of these around. I particularly like to see all of this dead center. And I know a lot of producers that like to just see all the stuff up front. Some people want it on the side here or here. So that's just a preference. Just understand you can build out all this data so you can see what things were shot with. And this changes depending, right? So if we changed and there was different shots on that reel, and the camera's sensor, I mean, the actual chip on the camera will read this in most cases. So this is a very diverse panel here. This is why I love using this inside of Resolve. But just know that, yes, you can do this in Premiere as well. So let's go to the other side. I'm going to hop into Premiere. I hope that buttons that up. I hope we saw what I was doing with that. I'm going to talk about this. This is another way to kind of do. Everybody wants to be somewhat of a detective when you're looking through all of this media. You want to find all the good bits, and to get to these good bits, you know, bagging and tagging your media and laying it all out, making string outs, right? String outs before selects. Selects come from finding all the good media that you have. Those are selections that you have chosen. String outs are just A to Z, everything on that card, right? Everything on that reel laid out, right? And you saw that I separated when I'm doing anything that has to do with interviews. If I continued shooting on that card, because it does happen, then I would separate the two and just make one for all interviews. And if you were doing this for interviews with multiple subjects, you can make your timeline named on each subject, on each person, right? And then you can kind of go through like that and just make it. The goal is to make it for collaboration. Just make it as dummy-proof as possible. Not that anybody's a dummy, but if you simplify, people don't have to ask you, what about this? How do I do that? What is this? Like if you make it all the numbers in their face, and you know, and they have transcription and all this, they can get to work. So the watching things down takes the most amount of time, because you don't just watch it once, you watch it multiple times, and something might jump at you, and then you watch it back and some other part might jump at you. So I recommend, if you have a TV with an HDMI port, your laptop has an HDMI port, watch it on television like you're watching it like it's actually a TV program. And then you watch it slightly different, like, you know, pop it up, hit play, sit back and watch it as though you were watching, you know, some kind of Netflix or something like that. So, but this tool right here for transcription in the later versions of Premiere, in the last two versions, I want to say, or the last major release, you can do this transcription workflow. And I'm going to show you, this is the start of it. This is what it looks like. And to get to here, I'll show you in just a second. But the goal is, and this is the bigger picture, is that you can kind of jump around here per text. You can search your text. So I can look for the word bike. And then I'll find everything with bike. And then it'll jump my playhead right to where he says bike. All right. So if I even find, like, I'm looking for the word everybody. And then I can find wherever he said everybody, it pops up, and you can kind of index and see where things are. And now you can go for those specific clips. So if you think about this like subject in a documentary or a line in a narrative film, now you can look at this, like I can jump right to that part. Like this is the part. So if you're looking at a script, you can kind of find it in your takes, right? But if this is documentary style, now you can go per subject and you can start researching your subject right here. So that's in the application. Let's say you want to take this externally, but here's the, and I'm going to go to how do you do this in just 1 second, just in case that becomes a question. But I want to show you big picture. Big picture is that you kick out a file that looks like this, and it's just a text document. And you can copy and paste this in the email if you want, or you could just leave it as .txt. You could turn it into a Word file. However you can work on it. I like just the simple text edit. All right. If you want to make it into a Word file, Excel document, whatever you want to turn it into, it's not hard from here. So, but this is everything laid out, right? Everything from head to toe, from A to Z, from all clips from the interview, right? And I can go in here and I can research things. And I've already, this is my paper edit. So I can go in here, find the bits that I want and copy and paste them and start scripting here. So I'm building my story here. And the good part about it is I can see those time codes. I can see, you know, and I'm starting to kind of lay these out and just see like all the things that I want, even if I knew, hey, that's just what he began talking about right here. So now I'm just kind of going to those parts. So you can convey this to the editor. The editor can look in the raw footage, or the editor can look in the timeline, you know, depending on, you know, they're going to be looking for it here. So if you're in Premiere and they do the transcription in there on their end or on your end, you know, you can send them these as time-coded notes. And many a times when you just sit down and you have all this media in front of you, it's pretty intimidating. So when somebody gives you direction, it just drives your day forward 10 times faster. So, you know, having somebody already do this for you, now you're just going in, you know, and let me hop in Premiere here. Now I'm just kind of going in, and if I were to go here, I can look for a specific time code. So I can go here and let's just look for, you know, 04 36 or 32, right? And I can go here, hop in, and I can type that in here, and that'll move. Well, it would be in a specific clip, right? So depending on what that specific clip is, you can also, here's a few things you can do in Premiere that makes life easy too. And again, I don't think everybody utilizes timecode as much as they should, because timecode is the quickest way to find your answers. So you can turn on these overlays. I went to the wrench, scroll all the way down, go to overlay settings, and you can make your own customized, but here's just kind of the default, right? And this is showing me my source time code, right? So if I were to go here, I can see my source time code, and this is like audio and video one, but you know, this one makes kind of no sense. If I wanted to, I would go here and change this, his editing, and that tells me everything about all these different tracks. So that's like 4 audio tracks plus the first video track, and that's the source time code, not the record time code. So you can have these up on your screen. You can have them, let me just show you that real quick, because it's a pretty important window. And you can save this out to a preset. So you can do this and have all these different things show up on your screen. And again, you can see like all your sources. If you're in multicam, you can see them and send them out. So enable transmit. So now you can send them out to the television as you're watching it on your television. You can enable it during playback so it doesn't disappear every time you hit the play button. And then you can kind of design what you see on your screen as you're, you know, inside of your edit. So a lot of things you can do with this. So let me just get back to transcription. And, you know, the whole point was, you know, if I were to look at something at the source level, I can look here and kind of find what, you know, what is what, you know, based on some notes. I can type them in here and I can jump right to that specific point. So let's say this was, you know, somebody said at you know, he said it a few seconds ago at 11:50, and this is where the quote started. So now you can kind of let these numbers drive what you're doing. So when you do this transcription workflow, everything that's here, all right, this is based on your time code from the timeline itself, all right? So this is coming from that timeline. So when you're typing these in, that's all these right here are coming from the timeline. So let's just go here and let's go to the start. So how do I get to this point anyway? This is where you want the computer to do the work to help you get to a good point. So there's a workflow, not a workflow, there's a whole, it's called Captions, Captions in graphics, or even just Captions. These are built in as preset, what was that? Preset, what do we call these here? Workspaces, okay? But you can just start with something really simple, like I like assembly, right? So this is assembly, and it's just really easy to lay things out on the screen. I only care about what's in my timeline. I'm not looking at the source anymore, so it's in two separate tabs. And then I go over here, and I just added in window, go to text, and this whole window here, this whole panel is the text panel. In here, you can read your transcript, captions, you can see graphics or any titles or anything you type on the screen. It's just a really interesting way. So this is available in newer versions of Premiere. So as of the last version, right, the last major release, that you have this text window. In older versions, you don't have this. So keep in mind, this is from the latest release, the latest major release, which I believe is the NAV release from April. And now there's 0.1 updates to that. So in here, transcription, the recipe for this, right, really quick, just lay everything out in a timeline. So you would go to your clips. Let me see, let me pull up my project panel. Right, and I would go A to Z, or let me just show you, you might already have things organized, which would be even better. All right, I'm just gonna put like use these. And they're already laid out. I can right click on that and do, where is it? Right click, and I think I can just drop it on the new sequence button, and there it is. From A to Z, I just did it all over again, so you can see. So you can just drop it on the new sequence from there. I'm surprised, I really thought that there was a new sequence from selecting that, but each program has their own style of doing it. To just drop it on there, that's not really much work. So that's the easy way to do it. You can also hop inside of here, select everything. I've already made that timeline, so I don't need to do it, but select them. And I typically, if you're doing this, make sure that they're in the right order. So if they're ascending, you know, or descending, so from 70 to 75, right click, and then do new sequence from clip. And then it inherits everything, and it builds around what your, you know, what your source is. So if my source is, you know, 4096, my timeline will be 4096. That's the beauty of this. You can always make 1080 transcodes later. So now that I'm in here, I'm gonna close that out. I'll go to transcription start. All right, let's go back to that text window. Everything is laid out A to Z inside of my timeline. I can click here where it says transcription and do create transcription. All right, and I'll spare you that time, but I just want to walk you through this point. 17 minutes. How do I want to do this? Is it based on a particular audio track? So if I knew that everything, you can actually see here, just to cheat, you can see that all of my waveforms are populating on audio 2, right? Meaning they were probably recorded on the second track in camera, because this is direct from in camera, right? I would typically like to clean this up before I even do it, but you can even just target that and say audio track 2, right? Or you can even name these in here as well, right? And then you can even set it up to recognize different speakers. If you do want to see what, you know, whoever that, maybe the producer or whoever is the interviewer was saying, you'll see that as well. As long as it was picked up by the microphone, it does a pretty good job of transcribing that as well. So you can see the questions that are asked, and you can have those in your document as well. So, or you can just say, don't recognize different speakers. It puts them all there. Then you got to do a little cleanup. But to recognize, I leave recognize different speakers when talking, and the computer will know the difference. When you click transcribe, also, if you look at this, you can download different languages. So it won't just transcribe it in English, it'll also use the Queen's English as well. Or you can go to Mandarin, right? Simplified traditional Cantonese, Spanish, German. Many of these will be popping up, I'm sure. So if you don't see another language that you will use, I'm pretty sure at some point it'll be a downloadable thing here as an addition, but English to Spanish, Spanish to English, that's in there. You know, you got French, Japanese, German. We'll start there. And then from there, when you click transcribe, then you'll start to see it. You'll start to see it populate here. I mean, you'll see a progress bar here, and depending on what it is, it starts to build that. And the next step from that, let me just go to this transcription done, and you'll see it look like this. You can take it one step further, right? And you can click this button here for create captions. I've already done that. So they live right here on this subtitle, independent track, right? See, there's an actual bar. Let me just make this bigger here. They live here on a separate bar, right? So they have nothing to do with the video tracks. There's a big gap in between both. You could bring these closer together if you wanted to. So, which I'm blanking on now, but I would just delete my empty space and kind of size this down a little bit. So, but you have your subtitles that pop up here. These are industry standard. You can also bring these into any other program and export just your subtitles as a sidecar file. And, you know, they're SRT files or whatever flavor that you pick that matches. So here's my caption track options. You can hide them or keep them, you know, as needed. You can make multiple if you want to. And then, you know, I did that by just clicking this button here. And when you click that button, go back. When you click that button, you'll see, you'll get greeted with this window here. And then you can kind of choose your formats, all right, depending on where you are in the world, choose your style, create a style even, because there's none in here. And you can say how long things live on the screen, how they're laid out, single line, double line, if you want to see fragments and things move a lot, or if you want to just see the whole sentence there. You know, the world is your oyster right here. So you can choose anything inside of here. Does a lot of the hard labor, time-intensive stuff for you. And then when you're done with that, this is where you make your paper edits. You can do, look, here's your CSV file, and then here's the regular text file. So I exported this. And I just, you know, when you do export text, that's when it makes a .txt file. So that's how you get to where I was over here. And then I just go from one to the other, and then you just email this out to whoever's editing. And that's kind of how you're doing your paper edit. So you're building your script here, and you can kind of say, like, you know, pull all these bytes, and then you can even put these, once you have these selects, now you can start to just populate, you know, what's on screen. You know, Sammy says this part, right? And now you have your like 2-column situation, but that's another step further than where we're at. So this is kind of just grabbing all the good bits from your media, from your interviews, and just finding all the gems has really been made a lot easier inside of Adobe Premiere at this point. So all I could say, if I was to take an educated guess, that I'm pretty sure that everybody will follow suit with this and create their own version of this, because this is pretty amazing. There's also a few different applications out there that are online that just do this too. Remember, there's one that I've used before called Type Studio, and basically makes all of these for you and separates them as a text document. So, but this is native in Premiere, pretty awesome. That for paper edits and to kind of just have this words on the screen. You can even, you know, it helps you if you just, even if you're just paying attention and you're watching like this, you can kind of hop around. You don't have to pay attention to that video, what's going on. You're just looking at, you know, text on the screen, but you have enough right here. Also, you can search here. You can also search here. So do a Command F like Frank, and you can search for things here and look for the word, you know, bike. And I'm just looking inside of here, and then it highlights it. You can see it's been used however many times. I think it says it's been used 19 times right here. So I can start researching a topic, right, inside of my text document. And then I can grab all the good bits and even start using this fragment of a sentence, that fragment of a sentence. The real magic with that happens inside of the NLE. So inside of any of your, you know, whether you're in Resolve, Avid, Premiere, Sony Vegas, whatever, on your phone, however you choose, you can actually go in, and then that's where you start duct taping these sentences together. And Sammy probably say a thing or two about what he actually said and then what came out.
Yeah, kind of funny because we talked for, I want to say, an hour or more, like all together, and you took bits and pieces of each conversation and sentence that we had, and you made it sound like it was just one conversation, but they were all like, the words were mixed up from different parts of the conversation. So when you edited it together, I guess this is what you did, where you searched the words and the timeline and linked it all together. You couldn't tell. I mean, if you've seen the demo, it seems like it's all one take as far as the conversation goes, but it was actually cut up from probably about an hour of conversation, right?
Yeah, well, I think, yeah, it was the conversation itself versus how much we were recording. And that brings up a good point. So when he says the conversation was an hour, but I have 20 recorded solid bits, we would like warm it up and warm up the conversation and kind of get him warm before we start recording. Two things about that is you don't have to record if you know that like a lot of the time, not everybody wants to sit here and watch talking heads talk the whole time. You don't want to see that person on camera while doing their interview. You could actually see what they're doing, or you could see some artistic B-roll or something. So a good cheat, if you're sitting here recording 4K, right, and your cards aren't that big, or whatever the case may be, you didn't bring enough cards, or you don't have a big enough hard drive, you can record some of these in in a lower resolution, like a 1080, and you get all the good bits, like the intro or the absolute quotes that need to be in there. You get those in 4K, and then you size down and shoot 1080, and all of this is just for the sound bites. So I've cheated to where I have multiple resolution interviews. So all the stuff up front, the intro where they slate and say their name, where they say what they do, and then key phrases that we're going to be talking about. I'll do that either up front or at the end. I like to do it at the end, usually if I size up back to 4K and size down at the end, then I grab all those very important questions where I know I'll see them on camera. Then I up-res back to 4K in camera and record those. And so I have a mixed bag, because talking heads for the whole time kind of just makes everything, just changes your whole video. So I don't really do talking heads the whole time. So I changed resolution, and then we had an hour conversation, but there's 20 recorded minutes, and that's basically us warming him up for it, talking about it before, and then kind of doing, he's like being his own stand-in. We're setting it up to where it looks right and how it sounds right, and then kind of warming him up to the topic before he starts actually talking.
Yeah, like you were saying, how you artistically put it together, where I'm talking in the background and then you have this shot of me riding the bike, but I'm just continuously talking, and you're just switching from one scene to the next scene to the next scene, and it just flows. It's just so, like you said, artistic.
The idea is just you're the narrator. You're the narrator, yeah. Which means that at some point, I don't have to see you on screen. We've already been introduced to you, so we don't have to see you on screen. And that changes the whole tone of what this is.
Yeah, it's also kind of remind me of one, like a feature, like very easy one button press in cut page in DaVinci Resolve. I mean, if you don't have B-roll, but you only have like talking heads, you can still also scale them and change the framing by just pressing one button. And because the name of that one button is like really flashy, how can one forget it? It's the boring detector, right?
Yeah.
It copies the text for you. It copies the text for you, laid it out on top of your timeline, and then change the scaling. Well, Tony, do you have one place for questions?
Of course, yeah. I feel like I just went on and on and on. So
Yeah, I think Maria in the audience is asking, can you edit the text or the captions? For example, if
Yes,
it's not accurate, can you correct that? Can you show us?
absolutely you can. So if I go here and let's just type in like red and amber or the word C. Let's say he spelled that incorrectly. So I can double click it and then I'm going to change this to C and then click away and now it's there. So you'll be, and then you'll see it pop up on screen as soon as you kind of refresh and go back to that point. So C.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes. And the answer you typically find in a double click, right? It's funny. It looks like it's just, it didn't adjust it here. But yeah, you can go here and change and double click on it. And now you get editable text. So if somebody, you know, if somebody has a particular way of speech, right? Their speech sounds slightly different, and you know the AI is not exactly accurate. You can go in there and you can tweak things. It happens to everybody,
I
no
think it
matter how
happens a lot
articulate.
on me.
Ha! I know it happens on me, so like I would just say like it's pretty standard to go in here, double click, and then you
Yeah.
can edit this, and then you can
So
also
double
like.
click and edit them.
Yep, which is nice and easy. You can edit your speakers too, so it's not speaker 1, 2, and 3. You can actually change who they are and even add another speaker and then tag and change your speaker. So here's your edit speakers area, and then also here, you can switch them here once you've
Nice.
populated names. So you can tag all of these, and then when they do pop up, it doesn't say speaker this and this, it says the name. So a little bit of work that you can already do inside of here, which is pretty incredible. And then also what translates over to your file is what you build into it ahead of time. So I hope that answers the, can you change your transcription? Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, Maria said thank you.
And then also with this, just to take it one step further, let's say I've made this, but I don't need to see it. And this can get this can get in the way of this data burn-in. So turn it off, right? By just doing, you have to go back to it and then you hit the reset key. Before you hit the reset key, make sure you save it, right? Save it as a new preset. And then also, I like to turn these off. There's gang textiles, meaning like if this one changes, this one changes. And then also this like prefix render text. So I uncheck both of these boxes and then that way they don't all just live and they're not all congruent. You change this size, that changes, and then they start overlapping and looking weird. So uncheck this box, uncheck this box, and before you leave this window, make sure you save it as a new preset. You can even turn options off of one. That's what I did with this. Turn options off of one, and then made this preset, which is a little easier. So when you see it, now you can see this is just based on source media. So if you're uploading a bunch of loose clips, that's one way. If you're, you know, sending a whole timeline, this is the way right here. And then if you wanted to, I'll just reset it, turn it off so I don't see it. And here's the beauty. I go to the page here to export, right? And then there's a section here that says same as project, meaning that that panel will be turned on. Or I can just go here and select the burn in that I would like. And I can already do this. You don't see it on your clip right now, but when I export this, I will see it.
As long as
So
you
you,
saved it as a preset, right?
yeah, as long as you save it as a preset, you can always have it there. You can even make a job that kicks out a clean version with no time code, no nothing, and then another version along with it as a separate export that will have the burn in. So you can do both at the same time. So that's one way that you can get it, and then take that, put it on Frame.io or something like that, or any other collaborative thing where you can add markers, and then those markers can be, you know, put inside of here. You know, so you can actually jump in, export your marker from Frame.io. This is something we'll do on Thursday. So I'm just giving a little tease of what that is. So
Yeah, by the way, just another teaser. If you want to follow more of Tony's, how do you call it, content, he will be on my show this Thursday. We'll be talking about remote collaborations from edit to grade. So one of those will be like the stuff that he just like give a teaser here on Demystifying Post Productions. So I hope to see you in this Thursday in Max on Color. Go to maxon.net/events and check the Max on Color for this Thursday. Right. Right. Back to you, Tony. Sorry.
I know we're kind of here at the tail end. I could probably take a few questions and,
So far,
keep this more interactive.
So far, there's no question coming up in the panel, but I have a personal question. So since you
Sure.
mentioned that audio is like a really important part in all of this, it's like half of the piece, right?
Yes.
How do you monitor audio on the field?
I mean, always, I think, listen, if you don't have a nice set of headphones, meaning like the big cans that sit on your head, right? Just as long as it has a cord, plug it in, right? Like get some headphones, even if they're just a tiny little, the ones that used to come with phones, the ones you can get at a gas station, at the CVS, whatever, like get yourself something as a backup. I have a set of those that are I have like 2 of them that are in my bag all the time, just in case, right? I keep them in my camera bag or I keep them in my like laptop bag, just in case. You always want to hear things in your ear, not from the speakers, especially laptop speakers. But if you do, I love, when I'm at home, when I have 4K screens in my face and I have, an audio interface and I have really decent monitors sitting on the shelf and I can listen, as loud as I want without everybody hearing it. That's a different case, but you want to have a combination of that, but you want to look at everything under a microscope. So put some headphones in and like listen to it in your ear. Like, the best thing you can do is have the headphones in. You're going to hear all of these things. If somebody said something weird in the background, you may not hear it on your laptop speakers or on your phone or whatever, but you will hear it when you have the headphones on your head. So I recommend no matter what you do, when you get to a certain point of this process, you should have headphones on, either when you're recording it, and also when you're doing these fine edits. Until you know that you've cleared that stage, then that's when I would take the headphones off, and then you can work based off of music.
I think this is really important. For instance, when you're auditioning for the sound bites as well, right, Tony?
Mm-hmm. Because you can also hear any imperfection in the way that person said it. So maybe they said it and like, maybe they were like about to sneeze. It could be anything. It could be like their breathing pattern is a little weird. And like, the whole point of editing is finding the puzzle pieces that match together. So in order to find the sentences that match or find the good bits that do match together, you need to like listen in, and then you're going to hear. Because if I put a part where Sammy's talking about one thing and then a motorcycle is driving by, and then I cut to this other part, now that motorcycle's not in that sound, it sounds really strange and it's very obvious. So if you don't want to give away your secret sauce, you want to make sure that things are consistent. So the biggest thing you should do is listen in headphones, because you want to hear consistency, or you can generate these things with room tone and stuff like that I mentioned before. That's extremely important.
I'll say too, like for me, like if I'm gonna have like a second person on set, like it's always a sound person, because like the sound people are just like so dialed in that they're listening for like ACs, they're listening for refrigerators, they're listening for like any kind of hums, they're listening for planes outside. And there are things oftentimes like, when you're on set, oftentimes there's like noises that you hear with your ears that the sound recordist is like, I'm not hearing anything, so it's fine. And then also vice versa, where like there's stuff that you're not hearing, but they're picking up. And for me, it's just too much sometimes to do. Like if I'm interviewing somebody and I'm running 2 cameras maybe, like I'm worried about like the visual aspects of what's going on. If the sun is moving and there's highlights or whatever, I'm worried about the interview and connecting with the subject. It's just so much. And so if I can get a second person, it's always going to be an audio person, because it's just like, you need someone who can like totally dial into that world. Of course, a lot of times like I do like what we do, where it's just kind of like, you know, I'm wearing all the hats. But if I could possibly take off one of the hats, for me, it's always going to be audio, because having a dedicated person for that is just so great.
And actually, on the sidebar to that, just to tack on to what you're saying, you know, next person will probably be a media person independently. So,
Yeah.
you know, as you shoot your cards out and you're still there in that set, you have that same setup. If something was wrong with the file, if they listen as well after the fact. So if you have somebody with a laptop and dedicated power, so as you're changing cards, they watch this stuff back and they're listening and watching it back. So media manager, DIT, they wear headphones most of the time, I would say. And they're not just watching pictures, like they're listening, and then they can tell people, like the sound person, you know, whoever the sound person is, hey, I think that audio came out a little low in the file, you know. And yes, most of the time you have a separate sound mix and it's recorded at 32 bits, so you can bring it back up. But now before you start shooting more, they can let you know, hey, bump it up in camera, bump it up to camera, or whatever it is, so you have a good file. So, you know,
And they also
in the
have
same
like,
vein.
yeah, I was gonna say like, I totally agree with what you're saying. Sometimes too, like you'll have the DIT who hasn't been sitting there behind like a camera, like watching this whole thing. And so they're just kind of like scanning to make sure everything's good. So it's almost like having a second set of eyes. So if they're on set and they're offloading media on set, they might come to you while you can still do something about it and be like, hey, you have a lot of really tight shots here. It's like mostly really tight shots. Or, hey, you have a lot of really wide shots and you're not really like mixing it up very much and going in tight or whatever. So they can tell you if there are trends or patterns, or this like actor is coming across weird on camera. Like they almost have like an objective point of view while you're still on set. So you can take their feedback and update what you're shooting for the next cards based on what they're telling you and stuff like that. So I think it's a great idea.
That's
And
really
these go in
great.
the,
Yeah.
they go into the camera report. They're like, they're notes that, like, you know, we'll make available some forms so people can see how much information goes in before it gets shipped to post. But one other thing, major thing about that, having somebody there to just watch back your files, is if you leave your camera in autofocus and something flies by, a big enough thing like a beetle, one of these big insects, a lot of the cameras now with the autofocus can hone in on that beetle that's in the background. That's just a dark circle buzzing around, and then you end up with this one little small hair of focus that's you're slightly out of focus your whole interview, and that's a problem. So if somebody watches back the file, they can see that the focus might be a hair off after this, and you know, you can tag exactly when it happened. The good part is you don't watch like 4 hours of talking heads. You use them to narrate. But, you know, if you do love talking heads, and this is just a talking heads piece, you know, it's not a bad idea, because you don't want to be sitting there trying to sharpen stuff in post. So second set of eyes, second set of ears, all that stuff really matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree, man. Well, I think that brings to the end of our conversations for today. And let me grab the presenter from you, Tony.
Sure.
And yeah, just for a reminder, if you want to check the upcoming webinars from Maxon Training Team, make sure you go to maxon.net/events, and you'll see that this Thursday we'll have another session with Tony at Maxon Color. We'll be talking about the remote collaborations from Premiere Pro to DaVinci Resolve, Frame IO in between. And then next week on Demystifying Post-Productions, we'll talk about the grade on this piece. And I think we'll be showing the final piece as well on that day. And don't forget to get your free T-shirt. The link is in the chat windows, and the code for today is creative workflows, also in the chat windows, by the way. And if you want to check the recording of this sessions or another sessions or any other sessions that was hosted by Maxon Training Team, feel free to head to YouTube and search for Maxon Training Team, of course. And there, under the playlist, you'll see any webinars that we've hosted before. Like there are webinars on ZBrush, webinars on Red Giant, on Maxon One, anything that you like. So if you want to catch up or if you want to rewatch this one, feel free to do so. Well, on that note, thank you so much once again, Tony, and thank you so much, Sammy, for sharing this amazing experience with us. So I hope to see you.
And thank you, Chad.
Thank you, Chad,
Thanks,
for
Chad.
always asking the nice questions, redirecting the the topics that sometimes we got out of the line. Well, on that note, I wish you all a very nice Monday, and I hope to see you all next Monday. And we're gonna be talking about the grade. Well, thank you very much, everybody, and see you next week. Bye bye.
See you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.